Hey everybody, it's Monday, June 19th, 2023. You saw the video with the tree that we came home from Indiana, which was a good time. And again, thank you, the fellers, for hosting all that and having us stay there at the farm. But I did a video on the trees that, small trees that snapped. But last night, after dealing with all that and unpacking, went to go take a shower, noticed that our water pressure was nowhere near where it should have been. Checked to make sure that none of the water was left on, which it wasn't. Came up here after a little troubleshooting, shut off our water there. Everything obviously stopped because that's where the main is, but then also shut off down there at the barn. So all I can do is really isolate from about the barn south and then shut this off, which obviously, again, that's the main. So we're shutting the barn off, turning this back on up here. You could feel the water just ticking away, or the water meter. So I determined last night, after walking around and looking a little closer in the dark, that there was a puddle of water here, and I've already started to dig this up. But these farm hydrants or frost-proof hydrants go down the ground quite a ways. And with all the rain that we had, we just had a downpour, so completely soaked. Had to hook up the backhoe, because what I'm going to have to do is dig a very deep hole. Very deep, 3 or 4 foot deep hole, so that this water can drain in there, so I can try to figure out why this is leaking. And I don't think the hydrant's leaking at this point. I think that the brass fitting may have ruptured down there, because I felt down in the hole. There's a couple sharp pieces of metal down there that shouldn't be, so I'm guessing that the brass fitting ruptured. Yeah, so not a good day today. Backhoe attached, I got my hole dug. The water is draining into the deeper hole. I thought I was gonna have this fixed, but I've got to now go to Lowe's to get another hydrant, and we'll go down to the workshop and I'll explain to you what's going on. As we head down to the barn, wanted to stop here because this hydrant's one that I've already had to replace. If you look on this side, it tells you that if they're leaking, all you do is just lift the handle. You loosen up this set screw, lift the handle a little bit, tighten it, and all you're doing is taking the plunger that's way down there in the bottom and tightening it up so that it forms a better seat and stops the water to flow. A couple months ago, this one, you could hear it leaking. So I kept tightening it, and eventually broke that set screw. So trying to make a long story short on this one. So I kind of had a backup hydrant. So I could have put a broken one, and then the other one I'm working on back there, take the pieces from that one and turn it into one working unit. However, once we get down here to the barn, you're gonna see how my day went from not so good to now it's, I don't know. Sometimes you just lose faith in humanity and products and things like that. So right now I am not very happy with a Lowe's product. We'll get down here and we'll talk about it. Now that we're here in the workshop, we can take a look at these guys. This is the one we're currently dealing with. You can see that it had a catastrophic blowout. So what I did is I took the other broken one, because I thought this piece was good to go on the other broken one that we just talked about. So swapping out the parts, got it put on back up there, turned on the water pressure, and it turns out that the one that I replaced just a couple months ago had a similar problem, but it wasn't as catastrophic. There was a tiny pinhole where the water was blown out, so what I thought was a leak was actually a rupture in the brass. After working in a warranty department for a sporting goods equipment manufacturer, every now and then when companies tried to cut costs, they try to machine down brass or whatever metal they're working. less brass they use, more money they save. Well, there's a give and take. And unfortunately, in my opinion, what's either happened is when they machined this and drilled this out, they got too close to the wall, and that caused a blowout, or they changed the makeup of their brass. And if they use different materials or a different mixture of brass to save money again, it gets weak and can cause these problems. So I called customer service. Well, actually, let me back up. Emily spoke with, or looked at Lowe's website. So let me really back up. She pulled up Lowe's website, and there were several other people that have complained about the same problem. So this is the Plumber company. And this is a frost-proof yard hydrant. And it says the maximum water pressure is 120 PSI. Going to Lowe's website, the other people had the same problem. Whoever answers these complaints on Lowe's website from Plumber ended up saying that they're only rated to 80 PSI, and if you have over 80 PSI of pressure in it, it could cause these types of problems. So while I was at Lowe's looking at the box, because this is the replacement, I talked to a lady in customer service who was very nice and helpful, and she said they did make changes to their product, but she says she has heard that it is 80 PSI. And I said, well, that is a large discrepancy when it is advertised as 120 PSI. Now I think our water pressure is around 90 to 100. She said, well, put a pressure regulator on it. Well, that's great, but again, that's not what's advertised. Even though it's not necessarily a safety hazard because we're dealing with water pressure, the thing did rupture, and I think it's probably time for a product recall. But then again, companies don't want to do that because it costs them millions of dollars to do a recall. And just knowing that from previous experiences. So what we're going to do is we're going to reinstall this one. We're going to confirm what our pressure is. She sent me a FedEx label because, like any manufacturer, when they have a defect, they want to see what the defect looks like. So they want me to send back in those brass fittings. What you just watched was a screen capture from the response from Plumber off the Lowe's website, which I can leave a link to that below. What I did is I went to Lowe's, got a pressure gauge. Now we put the new hydrant on before I put the regulator in, so we'll get to that in a minute. But we put the regulator on there, or the pressure gauge, and it was staying at about 115, 110, 115. So when I said our water pressure was about 90 to 100, that's what the water company told me. But it was really about 110, 115. So I did have to put a regulator on here to get it down to the 80 PSI, which you can see it fluctuating because I think the clothes washer is running down there. But either way, the product is not as advertised. So that is a huge problem, because I would not have purchased these hydrants. Now when I run my water sprinklers down there to try to get the grass seed to start sprouting and growing, the water pressure is just pathetic. So, but that's to be expected when you go from 110, 115 PSI to now 80. Not really happy with the product. I do not believe I'm going to send in those brass fittings until I decide, I don't know what I want to do. But I know why they want them back quick, because they want to look at them and destroy them for future use. To finish out this video, I was waiting for the replacement brass fittings to come in. Now again, the maximum water pressure on the box says 120 PSI. Our water pressure again was 110 to 115 PSI. We were told by the water department it would have been around 90 to 100, but we never checked it because with 120 PSI rating, really wasn't too worried about it. Again, this is the one that we had to replace, so it also blew out the PEX fitting. I looked up PEX's pressure rating and it's something about 200 PSI, but not really good. So that's the one that we replaced. Here's the one that I thought just kept leaking. There's a little rubber stopper that I thought was leaking, but it turns out where I was hearing water coming from was this crack and the pinhole right there. So this one almost blew out in the exact same spot. Now we did get the replacements back in from the company. I took a compass tool or a caliper tool. People call it different things, at least from my experience, but took a caliper tool or a gauge tool, and the walls of this are just maybe 1/100th thicker, which I don't think would make much of a difference. But it feels like it's more solid and it looks a little thicker, but either way, it's kind of negligible. Point being is that no matter what, they're telling me that it's 120 PSI on the box, but the customer service people and the person online who's responding on behalf of the company is saying that maximum pressure is 80 PSI. That's a huge difference. I don't know what you guys would do. Please comment below. I'm not gonna send these back. They know there's a problem, so all I'm doing is, getting rid of any evidence for down the road. But, the only thing is we're out maybe, 50, 100 bucks in water. But again, that's not correct. So one of those things that just really frustrates me out here at Deer Run Farm.